The night was dark and quiet when Amara left the mansion. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her hands trembled as she held her small bag. She could still hear Connell's angry voice in her mind, cold and cruel. She had tried to explain, but he refused to listen. The man she had served faithfully for years had thrown her out like she was nothing. Amara walked through the empty streets of Lagos, tired and afraid. She had no family in the city, no money, and no place to sleep. Her only wish was to protect the small life growing inside her. She touched her belly gently and whispered, "You will live. I will keep you safe no matter what." That night, she found a small church nearby. The old security guard saw her crying at the gate and took pity on her. He said, "My daughter, it's late. Come inside and rest." Inside, the church was silent and peaceful. She sat in a corner, holding her bag tightly, and prayed softly. "God, please don't leave me. Give me strength." Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Connell sat alone in his office. The room was large and filled with expensive things, but it felt empty. He tried to work, but his mind kept returning to Amara's face when she begged to speak. For a short moment he felt guilt, but his pride quickly silenced it. "She disrespected my home," he told himself. Yet deep down he was not sure if he had done the right thing. The next morning the mansion was unusually quiet. The other workers whispered about what had happened. Amara was innocent, one of them said. The boss didn't even listen. But no one dared to speak in front of Connell. He walked past them with his usual cold look, pretending not to hear. Days passed and Amara tried to survive. The church pastor gave her small tasks: cleaning, sweeping, helping serve food to children. In return she got a little food and a safe place to sleep. Though her life was hard, she remained gentle and kind. Everyone in the church grew to like her. She never spoke badly about Connell or complained about her suffering. She only prayed for her child's future. As her belly grew, Amara often sat outside the church and watched people go by. Sometimes she wondered if Connell ever thought of her. She remembered how he once smiled, a rare, brief smile, when she served him tea after his long meetings. He was not always heartless, she thought. Maybe he was just lost in his own pain. Back in the mansion, Connell tried to ignore his uneasy feelings. His friends came over for parties and business meetings, but the joy was gone. He spent most nights staring out his window. He remembered his late wife, the woman he had loved deeply before wealth changed everything. Since her death, he had become hard, pushing everyone away. Maybe that was why he could no longer see good in others, not even in someone as kind as Amara. One evening, while sitting in his office, Connell found Amara's small necklace on his desk. She had accidentally left it behind when she was sent away. It was simple, a tiny cross on a thin chain. He held it for a moment, then quickly dropped it into a drawer. But his heart beat faster. For the first time he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Months passed and Amara's time came. The women at the church helped her give birth to a baby boy. It was a hard night, but when she heard her baby cry, her heart filled with joy. She named him Daniel, which means, "God is my judge." As she looked at his small face, she whispered, "You are my gift. We will start a new life together." While Amara began her new chapter, Connell continued living in wealth but without peace. He didn't know that the maid he had thrown away was now finding strength in her suffering. He didn't know that the child she held in her arms would one day change his life forever. That night, as Amara rocked her baby to sleep, she looked at the stars through the open church window. "One day," she said softly, "you will know your story, how we had nothing but love, and how that love kept us alive." Far away in his lonely mansion, Connell sat by the window too, staring into the same night sky. For a brief moment his heart ached, but he didn't understand why. And so, while one heart was healing through faith and love, another was sinking deeper into regret without even knowing it. That was how the story began, with a heartless billionaire and a poor maid who refused to let pain destroy her spirit. It was only the beginning of what destiny had planned for them both. Amara's life slowly began to change, though every step was difficult. The first few months after Daniel's birth were full of struggle. She woke up before sunrise, washed clothes for people, and took small sewing jobs from the market women. Sometimes she ate only once a day so her son could have enough food. But no matter how tired she was, she always smiled at Daniel. "We'll be fine, my son," she would whisper. "God is watching us." Daniel grew up surrounded by love even though they had very little. The small church where they lived became their home. The pastor's wife taught Amara how to sew properly, and with time she got better. She started sewing school uniforms, baby clothes, and small dresses for the children in the area. At first she earned little, but people loved her work because it was neat and made with care. Each time she sold a piece, she saved a few naira in a small box she kept under her bed. That box was her dream, a dream of one day owning her own shop. As Daniel grew older, he became her helper. He would run errands for her, deliver clothes to customers, and smile brightly at everyone he met. He was polite and hardworking, and people loved him. "You're raising him well," the pastor's wife told Amara one day. Amara smiled. "He is my greatest blessing," she said. Years passed, and Amara's small sewing table turned into a small shop. It was built from wood and had colorful fabrics hanging in front. Children from the neighborhood often came to watch her sew, and she would tell them stories while working. Her laughter filled the little shop, and soon everyone in the community knew her name. Mama Daniel, the kind tailor, they called her. Though her hands were often tired and her back ached from long hours, her heart was full of peace. She no longer cried at night like she used to. The pain of being thrown out still lived somewhere deep inside her, but she no longer let it rule her life. She had found strength through love and purpose. Daniel grew into a bright young boy. He studied hard at the local school, and his teachers often praised him. He loved reading and dreamed of becoming an engineer. One evening, he sat beside his mother and asked, "Mama, where is my father?" Amara paused. Her sewing machine stopped and silence filled the room. She looked at his innocent eyes and said softly, "He was someone who lost his way, my son. But we must not hate him. We will pray for him." Daniel nodded quietly, though he did not understand everything. But he trusted his mother's heart. Meanwhile, back in the city, Kunal continued living his rich but empty life. His mansion was full of servants and expensive things, but he was still lonely. He often thought of the maid he had thrown out years ago. He never saw her again, but her name still came to his mind sometimes, Amara. He wondered if she survived, but his pride never let him search for her. "It's too late now," he told himself whenever guilt tried to speak. One day, a powerful rainstorm hit the market where Amara's small shop stood. The wind blew hard, tearing down stalls and damaging goods. Amara's shop roof broke and many of her clothes got soaked. She sat on the wet ground, crying softly as she held the ruined fabric. But soon, people from the community came to help her. "Mama Daniel, don't worry," one woman said. "We will help you rebuild." The next week they gathered wood, iron sheets and nails. Together they built her a new shop, stronger than before. Amara was moved to tears. "Thank you all," she said, smiling through her tears. "You've shown me that love is the true wealth." As her business grew again, Amara began to teach other poor women how to sew. "You can feed your families with your hands," she told them. She started a small group called Hands of Hope, where she trained widows and single mothers. Soon, her small work became a light for others. People admired her courage. She had turned her pain into something beautiful. Daniel, now 10 years old, often watched his mother and smiled proudly. "Mama," he said one day, "when I grow up, I'll build you a big shop with glass windows and bright lights." Amara laughed and hugged him tightly. "You already give me everything I need, my son." One afternoon, while she was closing her shop, a woman entered wearing fine clothes and holding a fancy purse. She said, "Are you Amara?" Amara nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The woman smiled. "I work with a charity foundation. We've heard of your group helping widows. Our boss is looking to support local businesses like yours." Amara was surprised. "Really?" she asked softly. The woman nodded. "Yes. You've done great work for your community. We'll visit next week." That night, Amara knelt beside her bed and prayed. "Lord, thank you for everything. You took me from nothing and gave me a reason to live. Please bless whoever sent this woman." She didn't know that this charity foundation belonged to none other than Kunal Adewale, the same man who had thrown her out years ago. The next week, Kunal would meet the woman he had once broken, but this time she would not be a weak maid. She would be a strong, respected woman, standing tall in her own light. Her kindness had built her up, while his pride had slowly torn him down. The story of Amara and Daniel was only beginning to unfold, and destiny was ready to bring their paths together once again. Kunal's world began to crumble slowly, piece by piece. For years he had believed that power and money could keep him safe, but now he was learning that life was not built on gold or wealth, it was built on truth, loyalty, and heart. It all started when his most trusted business partner, Depo, secretly sold company shares without telling him. Kunal discovered it too late. The company he had worked hard to build was already sinking. Newspapers wrote headlines like, "Adewale Group faces major financial scandal." Clients withdrew their investments and the bank froze his accounts. At first, Connell tried to stay calm. He told himself he could fix it. After all, he had fixed every problem in his life with money. But this time, money couldn't solve anything. His so-called friends stopped answering his calls. The same people who used to smile at him in meetings now avoided him in public. Then one morning, his lawyer came to his office and said quietly, "Sir, I think you should prepare yourself. We've lost the court case." Connell sat in silence for a long moment, his heart heavy. "Lost?" he asked softly. The lawyer nodded. "You're no longer the majority owner. Depot has taken control." That night, Connell returned to his mansion, a place that once felt like a symbol of power, but it now felt empty, cold, and quiet. The tall walls could not hide his loneliness. The maids walked softly, afraid to disturb him. His girlfriend, Lola, a woman who loved parties and diamonds, stayed only a few more days. One evening, while Connell sat in his study, she walked in wearing a red dress and said flatly, "Connell, I think it's time I moved on." He looked at her in disbelief. "Moved on? After everything?" She shrugged. "You're not the man you used to be. I can't stay in a sinking ship." She picked up her bag and left without another word. Connell stared at the door long after she was gone. He realized that the woman he had once thought he loved only stayed for his wealth, not for him. That night, for the first time in many years, he cried. Days turned into weeks and his situation grew worse. The once grand mansion became too expensive to maintain. He sold most of his cars and many of his workers left. The house that used to buzz with life now echoed with silence. He began to think about his life, the choices he made, the people he hurt. And every time he thought of regret, one face came to mind, Amara. He remembered the way she used to greet everyone politely. The way she worked quietly, never complaining. The way she had cried that day, and how he had turned his back on her. "Why didn't I listen?" he whispered one evening as he sat alone in his garden. "Why was I so blind?" The memories tormented him. He couldn't sleep. Each night, he dreamed of that moment, her tear-streaked face, her voice begging, "Please let me explain," and his own angry voice shouting, "Get out." He now understood how cruel he had been. One morning, Connell drove through the streets of Lagos without any destination. He watched people walking by, sellers, taxi drivers, mothers carrying babies, and he realized how disconnected he had been from the real world. He had lived for himself, not caring who he hurt along the way. At a traffic light, a small boy ran up to his car window selling bottled water. The boy looked tired but smiled brightly. Connell lowered his window and asked, "What's your name?" "Daniel, sir," the boy said cheerfully. "Buy one water, please. It's cold." Connell smiled faintly and bought 2 bottles. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly before driving off. But the name Daniel stayed in his mind long after the car moved on. He didn't know that life was already preparing a way for him to meet the woman he had wronged, through that same name. Back at home, Connell decided to make things right with his life. He sold his mansion and moved into a smaller house. He started attending church again after many years, sitting quietly in the last row. The pastor once said something that struck him deeply: "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is freedom." Connell carried those words in his heart. Every night he prayed, "God, forgive me. Help me find peace. And if it's your will, let me see Amara again, just to tell her I'm sorry." One day, as he sat in his small new office trying to restart his business, his secretary entered with a file. "Sir," she said, "there's a charity group that wants to collaborate with us. They support widows and single mothers. Their leader's name is Mrs. Amara Daniel." Connell froze. His heart started to race. "What did you say?" he asked quickly. The secretary repeated, "Mrs. Amara Daniel. She runs a group called Hands of Hope. She said she'd like to meet you in person." Connell sat back in his chair, stunned. The name hit him like thunder. "Amara?" he whispered. Could it really be her? The maid he threw out years ago, now running a charity group? He didn't know whether to smile or cry. He finally gathered courage and said, "Tell her I'll see her tomorrow." That night he couldn't sleep. He paced his room, remembering everything. The day she left, the guilt he carried, and now this sudden twist of fate. "After all these years," he murmured, "she's still out there, doing good while I was chasing wealth." He looked out his window at the quiet city lights and whispered, "Amara, wherever you are, I'm sorry. I was wrong." The next morning, Connell woke up before dawn. He wore a simple suit, no designer labels, no fancy tie, just a humble look that matched his heart. As he drove to the charity office, his palms were sweaty, and his mind was full of thoughts. When he arrived, he saw a small building with women laughing and sewing inside. On the wall was a painted sign, "Hands of Hope, empowering women building dreams." Connell stepped out of his car and stood at the door, his heart pounding. And there she was. Amara, standing confidently, wearing a bright blue dress and a calm smile. She looked older, wiser and stronger, but her gentle eyes were still the same. For a moment, Connell couldn't speak. The woman he had once thrown away had become someone extraordinary. And in that silent moment, he realized that destiny had brought him there, not to pity her but to finally face the truth. 7 years had passed since Connell last saw Amara's name on that charity proposal. In those years, his life had changed completely. He was no longer the proud man who once believed the world revolved around him. He had rebuilt his small company, but this time he focused on honesty, service, and helping others. He had learned that wealth without peace was an empty victory. One bright Saturday morning, Connell received an invitation to a charity event in Abuja. The card read, "The Daniel Hope Center, Empowering Women and Children. Annual Fundraising Gala." He smiled softly when he saw the name. Daniel Hope Center, he murmured. Could it be her? For a long time he had wondered about Amara. He had tried to contact her after that first charity proposal, but she was always traveling, always busy with her foundation. Part of him had accepted that maybe their paths were never meant to cross again. But now here was another chance. He decided to attend quietly. He wore a simple black suit and carried no entourage, no luxury cars, no noise, just himself and his heart full of mixed emotions. The event was held in a large hall filled with warm lights and laughter. Music played softly in the background as guests in elegant clothes took their seats. On the stage stood a big banner, celebrating hope, changing lives. When Connell entered, people greeted him respectfully. Some remembered his name from the old days, but few knew his story. He found a seat near the middle of the hall and looked around. Then the master of ceremonies took the microphone and said proudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our founder and leader, Mrs. Amara Daniel." The crowd clapped loudly as Amara walked to the stage. Connell's eyes widened in disbelief. There she was, graceful, calm, confident. Her hair was neatly tied, her dress simple yet elegant. She carried herself with quiet strength. The woman who had once been a maid now stood before hundreds of people as a leader and inspiration. For a moment, Connell forgot to breathe. His heart beat faster. He had imagined this moment for years, but seeing it happen felt like a dream. Amara smiled at the audience and began to speak in her soft but firm voice. "Many years ago," she said, "I was a young woman with nothing, no money, no home, no support. But through faith and kindness I was given a second chance. Today my mission is to give that same chance to other women and children who have lost hope." The hall was silent as she continued. She spoke with grace and emotion, her words touching everyone's heart. Beside her stood a tall, handsome boy, Daniel, now about 16 years old. He smiled proudly as his mother spoke. Connell couldn't take his eyes off them. He could see his own reflection in Daniel's posture, the same confidence, the same fire in his eyes. Something inside Connell ached deeply. When the speech ended, everyone stood and clapped. Some women wiped tears from their eyes. Amara bowed slightly and thanked the guests. Connell remained seated, frozen in thought. His mind was full of memories, that day in the mansion, her tears, his cruel words. And now, seeing what she had become, he felt both pride and shame. After the event, people lined up to greet Amara and take pictures. Connell waited quietly at the back of the hall, unsure if he should go to her. He almost turned to leave, but then he heard her voice, calm and familiar, thanking people one by one. Something inside him pushed him forward. Slowly he walked toward her. When Amara finally looked up, their eyes met. For a few seconds the noise in the hall faded away. It was as if time itself stopped. Connell spoke softly, his voice trembling, "Amara, it's you." She looked at him for a long moment before replying, "Yes, Mr. Connell. It has been a long time." Her tone was polite, calm, but distant, the voice of a woman who had long healed from her wounds. Connell swallowed hard. I was wrong," he said. His voice cracked slightly. "I hurt you deeply. Please forgive me." Amara looked at him quietly. She could see the humility in his eyes, something she had never seen before. The once proud man now stood before her, broken and sincere. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she looked at Daniel, who was talking to other guests nearby. Then she turned back to Connell and said softly, "Life has its own way of teaching lessons, doesn't it?" Connell nodded slowly, unable to speak. Amara continued gently, "When you sent me away, I thought my life was over. But now I see that God had another plan. What you meant for harm became my path to purpose. Tears filled Cunnell's eyes. "You have every right to hate me," he said, his voice shaking. "But I just want to say, I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Amara looked at him with calm eyes. "I forgave you a long time ago, Cunnell. Not for you but for me. I needed peace." Those words hit him like a wave. Forgiveness, the one thing he had longed for, was already given. He covered his face with his hands and took a deep breath, fighting the tears that tried to escape. After a moment, Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've changed," she said softly. "I can see it." He nodded, still emotional. "I learned my lessons the hard way. I lost everything I thought mattered, and that's when I realized what truly matters." They stood in silence for a while. Around them, the crowd kept talking, laughing, taking pictures, but in that small corner of the hall, it was just the two of them, bound by the memory of pain and the miracle of growth. Then Daniel walked up to them. "Mom," he said, smiling, "people are asking for more pictures." Amara smiled and introduced them. "Daniel, this is Mr. Cunnell." He was an old friend. Daniel greeted him politely, unaware of their shared past. Cunnell smiled at the boy and said softly, "You have a strong mother. You must be proud of her." Daniel beamed. "Yes, sir. She's my hero." Cunnell felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Amara again, then stepped back slightly. "Thank you," he said, "for forgiving me, and for showing what true strength looks like." Amara nodded. "Take care of yourself, Cunnell. Keep doing good. That's how you heal." Cunnell smiled faintly, bowed his head, and walked away slowly. Each step felt heavy but freeing. He knew he could never change the past, but at least he had found peace in the present. As he left the hall, he turned once more and saw Amara standing under the soft lights, surrounded by the people she helped, strong, happy, and full of purpose. For the first time in years, Cunnell smiled from the heart. He whispered to himself, "She didn't just survive, she became someone great." And that night, as the stars shone above Abuja, two hearts, once broken by pain, finally found peace and forgiveness. Cunnell stood silently, his heart heavy with guilt and gratitude. He looked at Amara, who was now calm and radiant, and he realized how wrong he had been all those years ago. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of laughter and music from the event faded softly in the background, leaving only a quiet space between them, the space where old pain was turning into peace. Amara looked at him quietly, her eyes full of grace. Then she smiled softly and said, "I forgave you long ago. Holding anger would only have kept me from growing." Her words struck him deeply. Cunnell lowered his head, his voice trembling. "You became everything I was too blind to see in you." Amara nodded gently. "Sometimes life takes us through storms to show us who we really are." Just then Daniel returned, carrying a small box of donation forms. "Mom, the guests are asking where to sign," he said politely. Cunnell looked at the young boy again, tall, respectful, with a confident smile that carried both his mother's warmth and strength. "Daniel," Cunnell said softly, "you're a fine young man. Your mother must be very proud." Daniel smiled brightly. "Thank you, sir. Everything I am, I learned from her." Cunnell's heart swelled with emotion. He thought about how much Amara had achieved without him, how she had built her life from nothing, and how her pain had turned into power. For the first time in years he didn't feel envy or regret, only admiration. A few weeks later, Cunnell visited Amara's foundation, the Daniel Hope Center. It was a simple but beautiful place filled with laughter, books, and children learning new skills. Women worked in the sewing room, teaching others how to earn a living. The walls were painted with bright colors and hopeful words like love, faith, and kindness. As Cunnell walked through the rooms, he saw Amara talking to some mothers. She was teaching them how to manage small businesses and encouraging them not to give up. He watched her for a long time, quietly. When she noticed him, she smiled. "You came," she said. "I had to," he replied. "This place, it feels alive. You've built something truly beautiful." "It's not just me," Amara said. "It's the people. When you give others hope, they help it grow." Cunnell nodded slowly. "I want to help too. Maybe I could fund the new training hall you mentioned." Amara looked at him for a moment, then smiled warmly. "Thank you, Cunnell. I accept, not out of pity but respect." From that day, Cunnell became a regular visitor at the foundation. He didn't come as a billionaire but as a man learning how to serve. He donated, helped organize programs, and even spent time reading stories to the children. The staff who once feared his name were surprised by his humility. Sometimes, when the sun began to set and the children's laughter echoed through the hallways, Cunnell would sit on a bench near the garden. The same kind of garden where years ago he had shouted in anger and lost a good woman. Now he sat there quietly watching Amara smile as she worked with others. In those moments he often thought, this is what real wealth feels like. Months passed and Cunnell's name started to appear again in the business world, not as the ruthless billionaire he once was, but as a man known for generosity and honesty. He helped rebuild schools, sponsored scholarships, and partnered with Amara's foundation to support single mothers. People began to talk about him differently. Cunnell Adewale has changed, they would say. He's not just rich anymore, he's kind. One afternoon, during a charity event at the foundation, a journalist asked him, "Sir, what inspired this new chapter of your life?" Cunnell smiled and looked across the hall at Amara, who was helping children arrange their artwork for display. Then he turned back to the reporter and said quietly, "A woman once taught me that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we give. I had to lose everything to understand that." Later that day, Amara found him outside, standing under a tree. The wind was gentle, and the golden light of evening made everything peaceful. "You spoke beautifully in there," she said. Cunnell chuckled softly. "I just spoke the truth. You gave my life meaning again." Amara looked at him with a kind smile. "We all make mistakes, Cunnell. But what matters most is how we rise after falling." He nodded, his eyes soft. "You rose higher than anyone I've ever known." They both laughed quietly, a laughter that carried no pain, only understanding. In time, Cunnell and Amara became good friends. They worked together, planned projects, and continued to change lives. There was no bitterness left between them, only respect, gratitude, and a quiet bond built from forgiveness. Whenever someone asked Amara how she managed to forgive the man who once hurt her, she would simply say, "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom." And whenever people asked Cunnell what changed him, he would say, "A maid once showed me what it means to be rich, not in money but in heart." Years later, their story became one people spoke about with awe. They said, "A billionaire lost everything but found himself again, through the kindness of the woman he once cast away." And so, the once heartless man found peace, and the humble maid became the light that guided him back to grace. The woman he once saw as nothing became the one who taught him everything: love, forgiveness, and true humanity. The end.